Welcome to the Tribute Lounge. I'm Mark Fawcett.
And I'm Shane Johnson. And today we are dissecting boots. This is an episode people have been asking for, and we're going to hit it.
Welcome back, folks. Today we're going to go through the whole gambit of snowboard boots.
We have a lot.
Yeah, we got a bunch.
We have a lot.
We got a bunch. We're going to talk about general snowboard boots. We're going to talk about step-ons. We're going to talk about pow surf boots.
Hybrid boots.
Hybrid boots, split board, backcountry boots.
Yep. There's every application of snowboarding, you can lead into a different territory here. We could have brought another 14 boots down from upstairs. But this kind of runs the gambit of what we want to talk about. I see this all the time upstairs, and I have to tell a lot of people, this is the most important thing you're going to buy. We talk about boards a lot because we freaking love snowboards and shapes and all that. But this and your goggles, in my opinion, are the most important things to focus on. So this episode, we've got a lot of work ahead of us here because there is a lot going on with boots. There's a lot going on with boot fitting. There's a lot going on with just making a choice, whether you have brand loyalty or not. Everybody has something different. Everybody has a different foot shape, a foot last that each brand does. So we will get into all of that. But Fozzie, you had a little history on BOA. We talked about BOAs behind the scenes before we started this up, and Mark taught me something I didn't even know about BOA. So
yeah, BOA was came to the limelight in 2001 with Vans and K2 were the first two companies to use it.
I didn't know that.
And BOA, the very first thing they did when they developed the BOA lacing system was for snowboards. So you will see it on golf shoes, trail running shoes, hiking boots, like all sorts of different things. But they started with snowboard.
That's
and
really cool.
with Vans and K2 in 2001. So they've been around 23 plus years. I think they had at least 2 years of prototyping before that, so they've been, they're hitting their 25-year mark. And of course, you will find BOA systems on so many snowboard boots now.
Hiking boots.
Yeah, all that.
My fly fishing boot has it now, everything.
Even helmets, of course, now too.
Helmets as well.
So it's a really great little securing lacing system. Big pros for BOAs. You can get them really tight.
Yes.
And you can back them off and tighten them back up quite easily without even having to take your gloves off.
And that's something I say for people on the chairlift too. Say your feet are cold, maybe you were running your boot too tight. You can just pop your BOA real quick. Where do I don't have one here. But you pop that top BOA really quick, and that's going to open up the boot, allow your main artery, which is feeding your foot with warm blood. That's why we get cold. You can loosen that up on the chair really quick, get some circulation happening. I think that's my favorite thing about BOA, is how quickly you can manipulate it. That same thing can be applied to splitboarding. I'm climbing up. I want fore and aft to work well, so I don't want to be in a situation where this is crazy stiff. I actually can slack it off quite a bit, and as I'm climbing, this can be a lot more open. And then the actuation of climbing is really clean, easy, not a big deal.
And in any sort of double BOA system or dual zone, you can keep your main forefoot and your ankle in tight while having your top one loose. You can do that with a lot of boots, but it's really easy to do with double BOA systems. It's fast. Again, I use it for like the pure performance reason for me. I can get them really, really tight. Tight enough that I get to the bottom of the run and I'm like, pop, 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 pop.
I see him do it all the time.
I'm loosening them up right away, straight away. For me, it's not for speed at all. It's just for how tight I can get them. And out on the hill, I can just back them off instantly, similar to that other sport with two sticks where the people unbuckle their plastic things.
We don't know anything about that stuff.
But it's really nice to be able to do that. I go up the lift with my feet, breathing essentially, blood being able to get in there. I get to the top, crank them up and go again.
A lot of positives to BOA. There's definitely been some negatives to BOA. Over the years, when there was the early stainless and some of the early dials, it's no secret, there was issues. And they were really sometimes difficult to put back together and repair for
That was the
people.
big thing, was difficult.
They were hard to
when they
repair.
went, they were broken.
Yeah. H4 has been in my opinion, the biggest leap forward for BOA. Working with New England ropes, when Burton brought that in, that was also a massive leap forward. Not having the metal, a lot of people have, it's like parachute cordage, basically. It's 600-pound test or more, you're not breaking this stuff.
It's a Spectra cord. Yeah, the stuff's
that's the
super,
terminology.
super strong now.
So New England ropes with
Doesn't
Burton.
fray as bad. I mean, there's still some systems out there with the stainless steel cable.
Oh yeah, we have a
quite
couple
well.
here. Yep.
But for the most part, they've gone with the more pliable material. It's a lot easier to replace, and especially if you're like working on it, like re-spool, etc.
And those are the three versions. We have New England ropes, we have the Spectra, and then we have the standard stainless. So those, that's commonly what you're gonna find on any of the BOAs out there. The other thing I'll always say too, the nice thing about BOA when you're in and just getting everything on, you pop it open, you can open your tongue right up, and then you lock it again. Now everything's loose. It's locked in place, it's
doesn't
open.
keep recoiling back at you. I've seen
It's
so many good
yeah.
riders like struggling with it, and I'm like, just pop it again. Lock it open. Yeah.
And then you just give that a pop. Look at that. Everything comes back in really clean, really easy, and then we lock it down again, and away you go.
So again, with that H4, the beauty of these is they actually
Pop right out quite
off
easily.
relatively easy. So instead of breaking, they pop off, and it's just like pop them right back in.
Exactly. And I'm not going to do it on this because it's kind of a two-thumb thing. It's not easy in the sense that that's going to fall off on
Doesn't
you.
just
No.
fall off.
But
yeah.
it takes some effort, but it is really easy to repair, and that's just something we want to get across. Most riders that are looking for BOA, a lot of them are kind of like Fawcett. A lot of them really do love a boot that's just insane tight. I don't ride BOA in a lot of instances because I like the upper of my boot to be quite loose. I want all that medial-lateral slap and ease, and this can get stiff and just is inherently usually on boots that are designed like that.
Yep. And well, I will clarify, just because it's tight doesn't mean it's stiff.
True, too. Yeah. So ideally, where I see the BOA in a lot of models, it's usually in premium models. We've got the Photon, we have Austin's boot, we have a multitude of others. You'll usually find it in some premiums, but there's convenience, there's ease of use, there's comfort, there's split boarding. I mean, it really is a boot that, the BOA system is something that'll cross over into any genre of snowboarding.
Absolutely. There are a few people, exceptions of course, that don't love the BOAs. They've either been let down in the past. One of the big ones is folks do a lot of sled access snowboarding.
Yeah, true.
And just
gotta
having
watch
it,
this.
that and the front one, and you're like looping your leg around, dragging it on the sled seat, on the rails of the sled. So you will find a lot of like hardcore sledders, not so much. It's not that you can't.
Yeah.
But
no, that's a good point.
I think you'd find more sled riders running laces.
Yeah, absolutely.
Standard
or
laces.
even the hybrid ones, where at least
The
like hybrid like this,
where it's out on the edge. Yep.
yeah, it's a little cleaner. You're not going to shear that off.
Yeah, it's usually
Super
that
easy.
front tongue one that goes when you're sledding. More
And the last
often.
thing we should point out with BOAs too is, you know, this internal system on all of them, we have this from years ago, and it's just a single BOA style. But this is quite an open cavity for that to cruise along in. They don't bunch up. Like, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff anymore.
It's really
super
clean. There's no like tight pinch spots. They used to sometimes they'd try and get them through too tight of a corner, and they'd lock up on you. I know Brett Tippie has a story. He had to go to a patroller and get cut out with like ticket clippers. He went to a patroller. He's like, my feet are falling asleep, quick. And they had to like cut him out of his boots.
Oh, crazy. So kind of sticking with BOA, but moving on to what we see as these hybrid boots is what we're calling them now, where there's a BOA integrated into the lacing design, but we have a secondary lace or a primary lace.
Primary lace.
And then the BOA
The BOA is the one
adding.
that's going to like suck your ankle back into
And
the
so
pocket, into the heel
Grenier's
pocket.
boot has it. The Infuse, this is a top seller for us, especially with our team riders. Mark behind the camera there, he's always riding this boot for a ton of reasons, I'm sure. But yeah, this one you'll see right here.
This is similar to the
actually-
Jones one you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and this I like too because you can really, you can chill out the top, super easy. You can get some really good heel lock by adding, this little boa is movable too. So I've also seen and told customers in the past, as you crank that, you can shift it over a little bit this way. So if you're running, say, posy, you might want that on the inside of your foot a little bit more. So you might want that cradle coming from here because your boot angle, and that's gonna help pile you into that heel cup better, lock you in. You've ridden hybrids a few times,
Yeah,
though, hey?
yeah, absolutely. Love them.
Yeah, you're going to be able to get everything as stiff, but this is sometimes going to be a rider that's maybe, like we were talking about, looking for a little bit more medial lateral movement up top. Or you can just, with this, you can really get it to the point where split boarding, like I'm talking about with the other one, you could still do a similar thing there too, where you can chill that out for climbing.
Exactly.
Okay, moving on then, I guess.
Step on.
Yeah.
So I would like to say a new category, but step-on, step-ins have been around forever.
Oh, yeah.
Burton, of course, have launched about 4 or 5 years ago their new step-on system, which a lot of us really like. It's extremely similar in feel to a standard boot binding combo. Some of us even think the performance is even a little better, a little more high performing in certain ways for response and power delivery. But most of the companies have done such a good job now where they weigh,
There's
grams
not a lot
more.
of additional
There's
there,
really not a lot of additional going on here on a step-on boot. But they do have cleats, some sort of form in the toe and the heel. I know the clickers from K2, they of course have, their whole system is based off at the bottom with the Shimano system. But step-ons, I think step-on or step-in is pretty much here to stay now. They've got it, it's pretty wired. All the systems that I've seen as of lately, you go in super easy. There's not a lot of compromise in performance. So be it the lateral flex or toe and heel, they're quite still responsive. So step-on's a new thing, and you're gonna see more and more boots sort of choosing who they partner with from a perspective of if it's a Shimano system, or I know DC is making this Burton system, which is really nice. Yep. And then there's a couple of step-on bindings now, of course, that can just work with a standard boot. I'd like to see them. I bet you there's certain boots that work better than others.
Yeah, the Supermatic, hopefully we'll get, those guys have reached out, so hopefully we'll get it, we'll try them. Neither of us have checked that out at all.
And we'll see what boots work best with those systems, for sure, this Burton system's
There's a good
great.
call out with this swath boot too, where this is the articulating cuff, and this crosses over to a bunch of boots, but it just allows, if it's a little bit looser, you'll really see how it works in, and that allows the upper to move into the lower, and you don't get a crease point where some boots can break down or stay a little too stiff because they'll crease. So that's showing you there how that opens up. And that, for me, I've noticed longevity. A boot will last longer, I've found, with the articulating cuff, but again, possibly because I'm running it looser. So I'm moving that more than maybe that Austin's boot might be flexed not as much because someone's cranking the boa and it's a full piece. So that's just something to call out, and you'll know if you're the rider that's looking for an articulated cuff, that fore and aft movement and really requiring that. And that's not a step-on thing by any means. That's across the board with, you'll see it on, I believe, Zeb Powell's boot right there as well. Same thing we can call out there. So
absolutely.
And that's another great double boa. We just, we brought, like I said, we brought a bunch of boots down on purpose. The cool thing to call out here is the sole on this, and the sole on any boot is also going to play into your decision making. So 32 uses their own high impact foam, STI they've called it, and we know how big that dude's going. He needs a lot of impact.
Yeah.
Resistance, heel bruising's a problem, things like that. So you're always going to look, a lower, a more price-conscious Vans has the rubber, the main rubber there, adds a little bit of weight, something like that with their high-end foam. That's going to really lower the weight of a boot. And again, it's just part of this decision-making. A lot of Burtons you're going to see have the Vibram. This wicked grip, if you're ever screefing or doing any rock stuff while you're split boarding, which does happen, to just durability on your binding system, walking in the parking lot. Like, this is another decision factor in all of it, and I don't want us to miss that part of it too. When you are shopping for boots, take a peek. If something's heavy, it might be that it's just a full rubber, which is damn durable.
Yeah.
But you know, look at that as well, because that's going to add to comfort.
100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's just talk about full laces.
Full laces, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this
I
one
mean,
here. Yeah.
So there's some folks out there, and I'm really envious of them, that they do their boots up in the morning and they don't touch them for the rest of the day. And I wish I could be that person. I really do, because it sucks.
Yeah.
Tick, 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 loosening and dealing with my laces at the top every time. The funny thing is I have step-on bindings, but with me backing my laces off every time I get to the top, and I'm like the last one in my crew to get going, because I'm like dealing
Well, you're
with
always messing with stuff. Yeah.
I'm dealing, tightening it back in, and I just love the fact that some people can just set it and forget it, essentially. And standard laces are great for that.
Yeah.
You actually can, if you lace them up similar to like a hockey skate, you can multi-zone tighten your boots. I've seen a lot of people through
Yeah, there's a
through
really
the
good
ankle
trick
area.
for
Yeah,
that.
you just basically tie your like half hitch knot once or
Pull
twice
that
through,
and then lock it
pull
into
it
the next
and lock
eyelet.
it,
Yeah.
and then it stays there. So you can like differentiate the tightness throughout the whole lacing system if you just do a quick little half or twist through each. And all that being said too, these boots, like this is the standard high Vans, just like the classic old school boot. There's still pro riders that love, like this is their boot.
I love laces. There's a lot of advantages too to the simplicity. So now we have no moving parts. In the backcountry, that's not really going to let you down. The only thing you might get is a little bit of icing in the lace, which can be problematic. But we've seen a lot of brands now going to a snow skirt on the boot, which really facilitates ease of use throughout the whole day.
Exactly.
You don't want them to get too wet. If they do and get icy, yeah, that's the one time you might have a bit of an issue with this. But it takes maybe a second longer to tweak a lace, but I like them.
Yeah,
they're simple.
Very
there's a lot to it.
reliable. Yeah.
And you're
Quite
going to
good.
save a few bucks right now. Obviously, lacing's a little bit cheaper, so that's another thing when it comes to the pocketbook. POW surfers are going to love laces.
Yeah, POW Surf.
So this was another boot we brought down, because this is a unique boot. There's splitboard specific boots, and now there's also POW surf specific boots. So the Christensen, the Bandito, this may be last year's color, but it's soft, it's malleable, it's leather, it has that same sole that Zeb Powell's using, but it's awesome. It is so comfortable.
Well, it's all about like when you're POW surfing, you use your feet a ton, and you know that. I mean, they call it surfing for a reason, and you want that foot mobility. Folks don't like a really stiff double boa snowboard boot like feels horrible when you're POW surfing.
Yeah.
Like there's actually guys that used to use 10 mil wetsuit booties, and that's what they POW surfed with.
And that's also
So-
why we have that one there too, because we see a lot of guys POW surf with an MTE. And that's, I mean, I've even seen Fawcett actually go splitboarding.
I split board often with this
and sliding those guys into it.
and throwing a Imprint 3 liner inside it, and that's my like. I probably split board half the days like
And that was our old school snowboard boot. Like that's what I was doing in 1990. I was taking a Sorel and I was dropping in a ski boot liner into my Sorels. And then they did the Scott Downey boot, was that the original?
Yeah, Sorel did that.
Yeah, Sorel. And that was the first snowboard boot I had ever bought, actually, before even Airwalks. But it works really well.
I just like it. Like I got a ton of range up top. It's like a really long cuff system, and I can like slide my foot forward so well, even more than some of the like classic snowboard boots. I can slide that foot so far forward with this setup, and then when I'm actually snowboarding, like super loose, surfy feel with this like
this is the key.
squishy boot.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't take it on some sort of like long traverse or multi-day split boarding mission by any means. But when I know it's going to be POW and going to be good, I just go with this with the liner in there, and it's
There's
best
no
set of
forward
split board
lean.
boots I've ever had. None.
forward lean, so
It
you're
might
not
even
burning
go.
your
Might
quads
even
out.
go back a bit.
Yeah.
Like it's
So that helps you not burn the quads out. Your knees aren't consistently bent. It's pretty cool in that sense.
And then I go home and chop wood with them too, and shovel the driveway.
Yeah, it's Point with that is everybody should just own a pair of either Sorels or the Vans ones. We just really like the Vans ones because honestly, this grip is better than what we find on Sorel. I'm always slipping in those Sorel ones. So that's, I think Vans did a great job with that. Another boot in the line that is, well, it's not just unique to Burton. I mean, 32 has done a version of this too, but Speed Zone, everybody had a name for it, but Burton coined it as Speed Zone. And
Speed lacing, is it
Speed
not?
lacing, Speed Zone, can't remember.
Multi-zone speed lacing?
I don't know, it's Speed Zone, pretty sure. But
Okay.
yeah, so that, I don't have as much experience with that, but it's similar to the BOA, but now we've got dual pulls. So we have, right here, we have a cleat. You're gonna put that all the way forward, you're gonna hear it click 3 times, it's disengaged, then you pull these guys up, lock it back. The thing that is my pet peeve with these, and I don't see people always do it, is you gotta roll these guys up. When you're done, you roll them up, they go back into that pocket right there, that all lives under your pants, and it's clean. I've seen dudes, you know, with these just flipping.
I've seen the same. I've seen the
going
same.
on, man?
For the most part, I do see people tightening and stuff at the top. For the most part, I think it's a little bit more set it and forget it.
Yeah.
Similar to a lacing system, because you know once you're out here and you're dealing with it, then you're like, put the clock on me here. You know, it's going to take a couple seconds to like wind these up
Yep.
and stash them away.
But that said, like laces, there's not a lot of mechanical parts but you. You're
Yeah.
the one tightening it, you're the one unlocking it. There is the little cleat system, but those don't fail. I mean, first year we had a few issues with them popping off and such.
Or they just would slowly loosen through the morning
But
or
not
what have
now,
you. But
not
now
now,
they're
yeah.
pretty darn good. Now they're pretty good. And some people just love the speed lacing. We get folks come in all the time like, I don't want BOA. Again, I think it's because they've had a bad experience. And they're like, yeah, speed lacing all day long.
Because that gets you closer to BOA, but with the sensibility of lacing. Let's put it
And
that
then
way.
also just the cleanliness. Like for sledding, this is a great option for sled access.
And that boot
snowboarding.
specifically, the driver, we sell to a lot of sledders because it's really quite stiff. This Vibram sole. The sled grates, and again, I talked about soles earlier, but that's another thing to keep in mind. You know, when you are sledding, you're ripping up the base of a boot pretty
hardcore,
good.
yeah.
So Vibram, the Michelin boots I really like, and actually that OG Vans is fantastic too because it's just a big chunk of durable rubber. And this is another boot a lot of sledders go for. If you're not shredding tons, then that's a perfect
Oh yeah,
boot for that.
this is so comfortable to walk around. And we didn't talk a lot about the shanks of the boots.
Which adds stiffness
Which
overall too.
definitely, and just response. And about 15 years ago, maybe even a little less, you could take a lot of the boots upstairs and just like twist them in any.
They might
It
as
was
well have been that,
Like it
yeah.
was unbelievable,
Yeah.
and I would just go through and be like, nope. Nope, don't want it, don't want it. And I rode driver X's for years because they actually had enough shank on the bottom where you weren't losing a lot of that power transfer in response to just a sole that was all squishy and such.
man, yeah.
But so they've added a lot of that just in internal structure to the construction of the boot. A lot of boots too, with that, they have like a really strong toe box that's more certainly almost all plastic now compared to textile.
Textiles or leathers.
Yeah, or
we've
like
had in the
treated
past. Yeah.
leathers and such. So yeah, there's a lot of boots now with quite a bit of plastic structure inside.
Yeah. So those are key elements of the shell of the boot. The other main thing we need to talk about is the liners and heat molding and. So as you make your way up, it's safe to say you're going to have a more moldable boot as the price increases because this is a big part of what you're purchasing. This is your interface to everything, really, is the liner system. Right here, just for show, we have the liner out of the driver, which is the Imprint 3X. This acts a lot like an Intuition, but when we say heat molding, we think Intuition.
Yep.
Those guys, Vancouver, BC, Canadians, killer company, and what they brought to 32 back in the day was, thanks to Kevin Sansalone, thank you Kev, because that's killer, but that really changed snowboard boots. The fact that we could start actually heat molding, and because my Achilles looks completely different than Fawcett's, and how we want that interplay to work, and the amount of heel lift and so on, is different for everybody, of course it is. So going to a reputable shop where you know there's a good boot fitter, we've been doing this 30 years, we know what we're doing with that, but you want to make sure you're spending time with somebody that's going to properly boot fit you. 80% of the boots that leave our shop, they have to be heat molded. They have to be heat molded in store. Some, I'll tell a guy, like the Imprint 3, some guys just want to break them in on their own because they think they lose less density overall. Maybe you just want to power through that first day, okay. But,
Yeah, it
but,
just doesn't make any sense.
No, heat
Yeah.
mold them.
Yeah.
Like, put some heat on them, get the first couple days out. Like Jeremy said in the other episode, which I thought was genius, and it's, no, people don't talk about it enough, but you take your old liners and throw it in your new shell. Break your new shell down.
For a few days.
Yeah, for a
before
few
you put the
days.
new liners in.
Or do the opposite, whatever works for you. But it makes a lot of sense, man. It really
Yep.
does, unless you've completely blown your stuff out to no
Yeah,
return.
yeah.
But heat molding is key. The other thing that we should have brought downstairs, we sell Remind insoles, and I love these. They actually, the way they cradle your heel to articulate between the heel and the knee is really unique, and we're not standing like this. We're standing like this, and they just cradle you better. They might.
So they canted?
I don't know if they're actually internally fully canted, but you can feel the way they've rolled the instep. And it must be, there must be some like 3 degrees, something to it. Because yeah, it sure changes, and I end up with a lot of those insoles in a lot of people's boots.
Cool.
Brands aren't spending a ton of money on insoles anymore because I think there's just really good companies doing it. So pull that out, that's a key.
Yeah, you're usually getting a really stock insole in there, and replace it with like a high performance one.
Yeah.
Especially if you're looking for that. If
Yeah.
you're looking for that performance, unless you have like a dead flat foot, you're going to want something that's a little bit more supportive and, like you said, places you in a proper position. A lot of the high performing insoles as well have a little gel heel,
Yes.
which makes it really helps. Like snowboarding is kind of renowned for bruising heels on flat landings, so you can mitigate that and eliminate that completely with a proper insole in there.
Yeah, and as we increase in price, you'll also see in liners, we could pull a 32 out, but I think it's probably only in Austin's boot. But they also have options of putting, 32 has the donut, Burton has something known as the J-bars. Everybody has an option. Burton J-bars will actually be these 2 little yellow pads that you can put into the shell to pressure right around your ankle bone and your Achilles. And these work really well, because again, nobody has the same shape. You might need one on only one side. You might need both. You don't know. And same thing with the donuts that you can slide into the 32, and it lives right in there, and you can make them as thick as you want, as thin as you want. But these are things that, if the shop's not bringing it up, you might want to check another shop, because you really, this is, like I said from the start, this is the most important thing you buy. In the whole mess of snowboarding, this is the most important thing you end up buying, and it's got to fit right.
So to just expand super quick on what you were talking about is that like that heel lockdown.
Yeah.
Years ago, people would always downsize into their boots to try and get a tighter heel lockdown. Now, they've finally got it figured out, I would say, all the boot companies, where even though you can have a size 10 and a half, 11 foot, etc., you don't have to squeeze down 2 sizes to get that same heel hold down. They have it incorporated into the liner and the shape of the shell now. So if you have an old set of boots, 8, 10 years old, even if you haven't ridden them very much, they're not going to perform nearly as well as what they have out there now.
Yeah, when we put people on the Brannock and it says you're a size 9, and that guy or that gal wants to size down, I always start with the 9s, because we've actually seen a shift in the one-to-one lasting too, and this boot conversation can get
Tell them what one-to-one lasting is.
into so many things. So one-to-one lasting came about 6, 7 years ago, where you now have a liner that is a 9.5, say, and you now have a shell that is a 9.5. And this wasn't happening. For a long time, your 9.5 and your 10 were in the same shell.
And it was just a difference in liners.
And,
One
or
was
some, yeah.
padded up more than the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it was just a thicker insole. And
Yeah.
sometimes the liners weren't even. There was one liner for 2 sizes as well as shell. So this came about, and it's across the board with the brands we carry, I know that for sure, that one-to-one lasting is really important. So these evolutions in boot fitting are key, and you want a shop that understands that stuff. You want to know you're working with a guy that can get you dialed. We also see, when I talk about thickness in footbeds too, some people need a little more elevation to even get into the heel pocket that's been designed. So I'll sometimes cut out a cork footbed that lives under one of those Remind insoles or the existing insole. A little bit of elevation here and there. Sometimes I'll ramp up the front if somebody's feeling the toe box is too big and everything else was great. So there's a lot you can do to get this dialed. The same as, you know, hockey skates, back in the day, anything like that. Out the gate, there's going to be a little bit of uncomfortable, you know, it'll be a little uncomfortable for a day or two with anything because new materials, you're breaking something in. But over time, if you trust the boot fitter and are stoked on the boot you're choosing for your riding style, then, you know, you roll ahead. The other thing I think we should talk about, Mark, really quick is stiffness of boot compared to the stiffness of binding and how that interplay works, because I don't want to give a lot of guys will come in and want a driver, and I'll ask them what binding they're using, and if they're using a Union Atlas, I'm like, whoa, okay, but that's intense.
Yeah, that's intense.
That's intense.
For
so
sure.
kind of explain that, because that's another interplay we should talk about.
Well, it's just how many responsive things do you want? So for instance, I took out a Jones Aviator with Union Atlases and brand new boots I was testing with the Vans with the
you were in the infuse with
the
tongue stiffeners
in there.
Yeah.
And I literally, it was like the worst I had snowboarded in years.
These tongue stiffeners, we forgot to talk about these. It's cool that Vans actually has these.
So anyway, I was checking too many ultra responsive boxes in a row. And Craig used to talk about this too. His theory was the board's the stiffest thing, then my binding and my boots is the softest. And he sort of works his way from the bottom up. But exactly, like if you're into like ultra responsive, and ultra responsive doesn't necessarily mean ultra performance. Things can be too responsive, then they become what you would say twitchy, uncontrollable. Again, when I went out, I felt like I was on like a bucking bronco machine. It was
lose your style.
It was taking me for a ride. So if I had that boot binding system and a really forgiving board, I probably would have been okay. Or that board, that boot, and a really forgiving binding, I would have been okay. But if you have like responsive, ultra responsive, all the way down the board, you could probably find yourself in trouble, not being able to control the system very well. So for with a driver X, I know like border cross racers, they'll go with a driver X, but they'll break them in. They'll start with 2 pairs in the beginning of the season and like try to evenly ride them back and forth a bunch, maybe keep one as sort of a race set. And they'll go with a moderately stiff binding. Border crossers don't actually use a lot of forward lean because they like a lot of vertical movement.
Well, so their knees are bending
and everything
proper,
has to come up and down super well without the high back getting into them. So funny enough, they've actually they lose some response because they have their high backs virtually straight up and down. But like outside of like the border cross world, which is like
that's a pretty narrow,
super fast. It's a really narrow category. Outside of that, if you have a really stiff boot, you're probably looking at a bit more of a less responsive, softer feeling binding, like the Ultra.
Yeah, the Ultra with that would make more sense. Or even
or like
the original Force, like
this
the Force
with
Classic.
a Malavita.
Malavita's with that, absolutely.
With Burton.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think the Malavita's discontinued, so I'd go Genesis with that.
Okay, Genesis would work.
Genesis
would work really well with that.
But that's another interplay where this is something else I'll bring up. Don't buy your boots online. Just don't. I'm not even saying that because I own a store. Don't buy your boots online. That's crazy. You want to go to a shop where you're dealing with people that know the brands they're carrying, and when you have a quick dialogue with them, they're going to have a pretty good feel of, say, 3 boots to bring you right from the get-go. And that's the other thing you do. You want to try a Vans, you want to try a 32, you want to try a Burton, you want to try a Deluxe. You want to try some of these brands because you're going to get a good indication of how these guys have decided what the foot last should be.
Yep.
And it's going to work for you or it's not.
Yep. I've had so many people come into the shop and they're like, oh, I want brand X. Like, I want this brand. I've had it forever. And then I bring them a different brand in the same size and the one they wanted, and they walk out the door with the other brand because it's the glass slipper, it's the Cinderella story, fits their foot better. It's a popular theme. Running and hiking boots and shoes. You go in, you try on all the different. I think there's one French company that I love their I love the look of their shoes. They're trail runners and they're hikers. Like, I'd love to be in them. I cannot fit in them.
Yeah, it does-
So
yeah.
I have to like have to go to a different. I go to these really nerdy, goofy ones, but they fit great.
And people establish brand loyalty through understanding that Burton works for my foot or 32 works for my foot or things like that.
Exactly.
Once you figure it out, and then again, the shimming systems, the heel hold systems, all this plays into it. But don't go into a shop feeling like you got to size down a whole size anymore. That's not part of it. I've seen a lot of split boarders do that, and it's detrimental to climbing because you're forcing so much toe pressure already. You've sized down, you're crushing your toes. And those dudes, like, I've got a buddy who's just no toenails left from this. So listen to the guy that's helping you fit, do your research, try on boots. Don't buy them online. You got to put your foot in this.
Yeah, and they have that variability like you're talking about. If we don't lose as much now in like the sizing, the boot will soften,
Yep.
but they don't blow out like they used to. From a perspective of your size 9s aren't like a 9.5 after 5 days in, but they're a little softer for sure.
Yep.
If you liked them crisp and stiff after 5, 6, 10 days, that's when you reinsert.
Something like this.
Yeah, the stiffeners.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
Vans has a great system for that. Burton, some years do and some years don't. With the Driver X, used to have this really cool plastic tongue. I kept all mine.
Yeah, they don't do it anymore, but that's because I think the way they've designed the spine in that is now just so stiff that it's
Yeah, they get their
it's
stiffness
enough.
actually from you being bound into the back spine,
Yeah.
and you're trying to pull that back spine in, and that's where the real structure is.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the stiffest boots we sell. Something like the Infuse fits in a little more medium. A lot of the free rider guys, like Mark, I said behind the camera there, he rides this one a lot because he can still throw a killer method, but also can carve like a beast in a boot like this. These hybrid boots are good for that. If you're trying to save a few bucks and you're going a little lower here, yeah, you're going to have more medial lateral play. But maybe your binding system's a little stiffer, and therefore
This works great. Or you're that guy that wants to go out and old school side hits, doing stale fishes where your ankle is like at 90 degrees, Jeff Brushy style,
Yeah.
which I like totally respect and dig. Yeah, I mean, I'm on step-ons, and they're actually a little bit stiffer laterally, but I can do some different things with those now. Like I can pick the front half of that board up just by dropping my knee in now.
Yeah, watching people butter with step-on has been really cool too, because yeah, you can manipulate the board in a new manner that we're just starting to see what's happening with
Yeah,
it.
so you actually have lateral response that before you would move laterally and it wouldn't affect the board much. Now, like you crank that in, like the whole front of the board lifts straight up.
So that's wild. There'll be some
But you're
cool
not
things.
you're not throwing 90-degree stale
fish,
fishes
no,
or
no,
like
no,
your methods. You can certainly method with it, but like the real tweaky ones, like you want, I've even seen that Whitewater,
back
a
to old
really
school.
good
Go
rider,
back
and he
to
was
full
riding
old
in
school.
these
Yep.
felties and all, like yeah.
So yeah, the point today, I mean, we can dissect all these boots and there's so much to it, but we wanted to get an episode out to really just cover the basis of, okay, I need new boots, where do I start, what am I looking for, and what options are there out there. So hopefully we've covered that for you today. We'll get into the real nitty-gritty as necessary, so drop a comment below. We love hearing what you guys want us to do. We're still trying to get the gals from upstairs, downstairs to help us put together the top 5 boards, because you don't want to see us talking about that. We want Carmen down here to run through that. So hopefully that one's coming soon. We got a couple
Through the pipeline.
Yeah, we got a couple good ones coming. Still working on the Patreon, so become a member. You get a one-on-one with Fozzie. We're still going to work that out, but trust me, that's going to be pretty cool. And that'll be more into, I think, what Mark can lend to everybody is offering some really good tips on carving. Doing what you do best, man.
Or
Like it's
or
gear.
equipment and
Yeah.
gear setup and tuning.
specific to
and-
you.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Everyone has their specifics, so you'll be able to rack his brain. So check that out below. Become a member. That helps us keep this rolling too. Anything else,
100%.
Fozzie?
That's it.
That's
I think
it?
we got it. I
All
think we
right.
got it wired. That was a long episode.
Thanks everyone for watching. Again, please subscribe. Tell your homies if you like it. We do appreciate the support, and it's keeping the show on the road. So thank you so much. And hashtag go Borden.
Thanks for viewing the Tribute Lounge.